You're up, Commissioner.
Okay, Bannock County Commissioners are now in session. First item on our agenda is Commissioners' invoices, Commissioners' report, and credit applications. I visited with Christie this morning on a couple of items. One that I'll just bring up, we have a consultant for the forensic pathologist. How come we're paying a month in advance?
I don't think it wasn't meant to be run this time, it was just meant to be turned in for February.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So it's on here, January and February are both here, and I just...
It should be, and I'll make a note of that in the
If
future.
you put a note on it and just say hold till February? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that'll just be January for this month.
Well, the check is here, you're gonna cancel that check?
No,
or-
just
what
hold
we'll
it.
do is we'll just hold it for a couple weeks.
Okay.
And then we'll send it.
I'll make a note of that in the future.
Okay.
You bet.
All right. We generally don't pay ahead of time.
Yeah.
Correct, I was not aware.
So that was the only other one that I really needed some input on. I didn't even sign that, did I?
There was one invoice that you had a question on for e-courts. I found out what that was, and I'm glad you brought that up. It is actually for the courts to send text messages reminding people of their court date.
Okay.
That was paid out of jury. We're going to adjust that and pay that out of just the courts. It's going to be the same fund, but not a jury-related line. So,
Okay.
but that's what that is. And
That's
a
what
year's,
that other line was.
Yeah, that's a year's subscription.
Okay, thank you. And that's why I questioned it, because it was a full year's payment also.
And then I also have an invoice. We'll get to that point.
Okay. So this is a credit. And have you looked over that? I saw that you crossed, I know you did, because you crossed it out, yeah. Put your initials on it.
Yeah, so that's just kind of a different application that we've really not run into before, where they actually ask for a limit amount. We set it at 60,000. If we need to increase it, we will. Dan Kendall asked for that application so that he could have a backup supplier for doors and items like that. Within the application, they asked for a personal guarantee. We never do that, so that's what I crossed off. And then the page before that, where they pull a credit report, we don't have a credit report, so there's nothing for them to pull, so I put not applicable. And legal did look through that with me on Tuesday morning.
Okay.
I also have for the board the juvenile detention billing. That came in less than what we budgeted for, just because we're never sure at budget time how much it's going to be. It came in at $929,000, is that right?
928.
928. The budget was $975,000, so we have $46,000 left in that line item that is available for other items that may come up in a little bit.
Okay. All right. A motion on the Commissioner's report.
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we approve the invoices and the Commissioner's report as presented.
Got a motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. All right. Next, we have a certificate of residency. This came before us last week, and it was marked as denied, but that wasn't right.
Oh.
And so it's brought back before us again this week to approve. Motion on that
Mr.
one.
Chair, I'd move that we approve the certificate of residency as presented.
We have a motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next, we have reports on payroll. I didn't have any concerns there.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the payroll report.
We have a motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Did you sign one of them, Jason? No. There was one of these that was
Yeah.
right there.
Forgot to sign this one.
All right, let's go into our regular work session then. Scott?
Good morning, Commissioners. Scott Crowther, Event Director, Business Manager.
Brent Robertson, National High School Rodeo for State of Idaho.
Matt Gibbs, Idaho State President, High School Rodeo Association.
So as you recall, we met a couple months ago to talk about submitting our offer to the Idaho High School Rodeo Association to extend their contract for the next 3 years. So we have them this year, but we want to extend it out for 3 more years. They took it back to their meeting and they accepted the offer that we put forth, and so now we're just actually signing the contract between our two organizations. And so I know from our standpoint, we're excited to have these guys. It's such a great event. We really enjoy hosting them every year.
What's the total number of years?
3 more years. So we have them
So it's
for
4 total.
24. So our current contract is through 24. This is 25, 26, 27.
Okay.
So we just want to get it signed before next fiscal year, next calendar year.
And I like this. I mean, we've had a good relationship, and I appreciate that. We're grateful that the youth are able to come here and utilize the facility. We feel like it's a very good facility and stuff. As I was reading through this, my only question is on the vendors.
Mm-hmm.
So it says that they can bring in any vendor they want. Do you have any say, on the vendors? And they're responsible for all the licensing, everything else. What's the checkup on that, the balance?
So typically we do any electrical issues, we evaluate the electrical issues. We don't monitor, we don't approve any vendors that they use. This is one that we really just turn the facility over to these guys and let them run their event for the most part. We take a support role in most of the stuff, but typically it's just bringing up, having an electrician come up and verify if there is an electrical issue. That's all.
And that's where I was reading that. It says that actually somebody's responsible for making sure that they comply with state, local, and federal laws. And I didn't know how that actually worked out.
Yeah, typically it's just the electrical side, which is what we do with, all of our food vendors. These guys bring in clothing vendors, and it's a pretty awesome deal. But again, if it doesn't have anything to do with the electrical side, we don't really worry about it.
Okay. Any concerns at all?
Oh no, I'm excited to have these guys back with us. I think it's just, personally, it's one of my very favorite events. It's a lot of time, but it's such a cool thing to watch. So.
Just on the vendors real quick, it says that you guys will provide us a list of the vendors that you're using. Do you already have that list prepared, or?
We don't. We usually go through our sponsorship committee. He handles all that.
Do you tend to have the same ones year after year?
Typically, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. I don't have any issue with anything else. Whatever sounded good to me.
Is Kelly running that again this year?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, motion?
Mr. Chair, I'm proud to move that we accept the contract with the Idaho State High School Rodeo Association.
Have a motion, all in favor say aye.
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 Welcome home for 3 more years, gentlemen.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jason signed this one.
Christie?
Christy Clauser, Comptroller. Item I have for the board is a discussion about having Wifley help us with the financial development process. At the exit conference for the FY22 financials, Teresa and Fred mentioned that they were going to put together this proposal and provide us the quote, so I'm just presenting that to you. I talked to Jason about this. Originally, I was against having them do anything with our financials, but due to some conversations Jason and I have had a lot of extra work put on me over the last few years, and I think this might be helpful. How this is going to work is I will still write up the financials. I have a draft. I'll still put everything together. Not all of the financials are going to be developed by them, so it's not like we're giving them our book and having them do it. There's actually pieces and parts that I still have to put together, but they have a program that's on the back side that once they upload the trial balance, it funnels all the numbers through to the financials. I still have to do the cover page, the transmittal letter, the organization chart, county information. They'll do their letter. I still have to do pieces and parts of the MD&A, parts of the statement. So the big benefit of this is as we get towards the end of the financials and everything gets put together, we have to make sure numbers tick and tie all the way through the statements. And if we have to make a change in one spot, they'll make that change and it trickles through the whole document. There is a one-time setup fee that is, they estimate to be anywhere between $13,500 and $17,500. She doesn't think it's going to be that high by any means. It's probably going to be a lot closer to the lower end, possibly even $10,000. But this is going to save me time when we get down to the crunch time of having to make sure all the numbers tick and tie through. It's also going to save their time, which will save in the audit cost. I do have a funding source. There's $46,000 in savings from the juvenile detention billing. I was hoping we could reallocate that to be spent on this.
You said the setup would be maybe 10 to 15,000, somewhere in that range. What's the ongoing cost?
There really won't be.
There's no ongoing cost?
Once they set it up, it just flows through. The only thing they'll have to do, which they would have to do anyways, is if we move a fund from a non-major to major, or we add a fund, then they'll have to map that out through their system. They would have to do that anyways, so that they can finish the audit. This is kind of the backside of the workings for their audit too.
Mhm.
So
So it really helps both parties.
it does.
And initially you said you were opposed to this, but your concerns have been alleviated and now you believe this is something that would be beneficial to you. Am I quoting you correctly or no?
You are. Reality is hit. I don't like giving things up. But
Never noticed that.
But there have been a lot of changes. Last year, we had the new lease requirements, for reporting requirements. We've got SPIDAs this year. They're trying to change how we report compensated absences. So just in the financial reporting, I've got more things every year. In fact, people are starting to backlash against GASB because they're trying to make so many changes and nobody can keep up. I've got ARPA now that I didn't used to have. There's reporting. I'm trying to give that part away, but there's still the tracking and keeping up on all the projects. I've got new staff. I mean, I can give you a whole list of items that are on my plate that I didn't originally have that is taking time away from me being able to do.
It sounds like for this one-time cost, this particular process becomes much more efficient.
It will.
Okay.
And she's been asking a little bit to do that. It will help them out too.
Well, I've been happy with them as looking over our accounting and stuff like that. I mean, they've been thorough in their work and their work's been efficient and effective, in my opinion, so.
I love them. I think they're great.
If this is another step that helps us and helps your office, and we have the funds available, I think it's money well spent.
Good luck letting go. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve the proposal from Whipley to do the, what is it, the financials for us. Assist with financials. See it, there we go.
We have a motion, all in favor say aye.
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 Can I get that document and so I can forward it to them, and then I'll share it with Kristen.
All right. Shanda, there she is.
Good morning, Commissioners. Shanda Crystal, Chief Procurement Officer. I have a procurement update for the board today. I'd like to start with the top one for the Sheriff's Office, the wet cell renovation for the detention center. That draft has gone to the department for review, and we anticipate that going live in the next couple weeks. In regards to the Commission Office for the Forensic Pathologist building shell, in order to ensure that those drawings were ready for the pre-bid meeting, we have adjusted the schedule slightly. We've needed to move the pre-bid meeting back for a week from the 14th to the 21st of February, but I was able to find room at the back end of the schedule that then we have the contract award date remains the same. So we moved a little bit, but we're still on track for that project. In regards to the emergency services, Lava Ranches, Charity submitted an update in regards to the treatment prescriptions. Those have been sent and approved by the landowners, and we're moving on to the next steps there. And then we're just watching Mother Nature to make sure when it's appropriate that we can schedule those pre-bids to go ahead out and look at the land for the contractors. In regards to the 9 Mile and Big Onion projects, those have also, those applications for those projects have been submitted for review to the feds. The next one for the commissioners for architectural services for a year. That bid was published on the 24th in the Idaho State Journal, and it'll go again on the 31st. And we have sent that, invited 5 local firms to participate that. We've had a firm already reach back out that they're excited for the opportunity. So I do anticipate getting some traction there in that project. In regards to the public works for guardrails, so that bid was also gone live this week on the 23rd. It was published in Idaho State Journal. It'll go again on the 30th. We've invited 4 different companies. The same company that won the state bid, though it was higher, we did want to give them the opportunity to bid on our project. The local company that was doing our smaller project, we invited them as well. There's another company out of Oregon that Ada County uses, so we invited that company. And I can't remember where number 4 is, but we have invited 4 of them personally to review that and bid on that project as well. Another one for the public works is the fuel bid. We did issue an addendum last week for questions that we received. We had a lot of questions submitted on that, and so we've had a lot of engagement with those suppliers, so we're excited to see that one. Those bids are due on February 5th. And my favorite, the detention center roof bid. We reached out to our contractor, Contract West, to apply a little pressure to get that done. We're tired of it hanging out there. We need to wrap it up for ARPA reasons as well as, just get it off of Levi's to-do list. In regards to that, they do have Versico and Contract West. Both will be on site for their inspection on February the 1st. That is, for all intents purposes, they will finalize it then. I don't know if it'll take a week or so. I'm guessing maybe for Versico to release that warranty once approved, but at least we've got both the manufacturer and the contractor on site with Levi on the 1st. Are there any other questions that I can answer?
I don't have any.
Nope, things are moving.
Can you, I'm sorry to ask you to repeat this, but tell me the dates again for what you reported on the forensic pathology shell.
For the forensic pathologist, we needed to move a couple of the dates.
Yep.
For the pre-bid meeting, we moved it from February 14th to the 21st. We kicked
February 21
Correct.
is the pre-bid meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep. We're inviting contractors to come and talk, review the drawings. That was why it was critical to have those drawings ready and available for them, have them come and talk about the project. And then, but I was able to find a week as far as reviewing those documents once the bids get submitted back into us. And so then the proposed contract date to go before the board still remains the same.
Which is?
I think it's the beginning of April, but I can't remember.
When we would have contracts in front of us to consider.
Oh, so that is the complete process. So we would back up the board once we open bids.
What's the opening bid date do you anticipate?
March 11th is sticking in my head, but I don't.
Sometime in March, because
Yeah.
you just said that something moved and something was in March, and I thought March 21 or something was a date you mentioned, but I can't remember what it was.
The one that I mentioned today that's moving is the pre-bid, but that's February 14th to
Right.
February 21st. That one I know for sure is kicking back a week. I'll bring the printout of the calendar next time, but I believe I know it's in
I'll just
March.
catch you downstairs.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Buddy?
Morning, Commissioners. Buddy Romerell, Public Works Assistant Director. The Ambulance District, Sheriff's Office, and Emergency Management Departments have requested to dismiss several of their vehicles. Public Works has inspected and recommends that we send 4 of those vehicles to auction and reallocate 4 of those vehicles within the departments. Shanda has sent out a request for all departments to see what interest we would have in these vehicles, and we got quite a bit of interest. I don't know how in-depth you would like me to go with this. I can explain to you which vehicles and which vehicles Public Works recommends we swap out in those departments, or which direction you would like to see.
So the 4 for auction, and no questions on them at all. I mean.
Is that the top 4?
So it's
Oh, there
number
they are.
1, number
Okay.
2, number 5, and 7.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have the other vehicles that,
So number 3 is a reallocation. It's a 2013 Chevy Tahoe coming from the Sheriff's Office, 126,000 miles. Emergency management request to replace a 2008 Dodge Durango. And just to touch base on the Durangos, we've had a whole bunch of electrical problems with those throughout the county, so that's one that I would like to see us replace.
well, I know that he's been stranded more than once with that one.
Yeah, twice, for sure. So that's one I would like to see get replaced. And then facilities would like to replace an '07 Chevy van. And then adult probation request to replace a 2010 Ford Expedition. On that Expedition, it's a 2010 and it has around 145,000 miles. So if we move forward with anything fleet management, that's pretty close to the specifications that we could put there as well.
So just looking at the 3 that have requested that vehicle, emergency management would be the one that you would
Yeah.
check out first because of the condition of that vehicle.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay,
The 2014 Dodge 4500, the only request we had for that was road and bridge, and our request would be to replace a 99 Ford. It's a 3500 dually. It's the truck we use for our tire replacements. So our thought was we'd pull the bed off of that truck, put it on a 2014, get a 15-year newer vehicle. So
that just makes a lot of sense to me. That's in-house.
And then the 2015 Durango. Oh, so we had a request from the coroner to add a 3rd vehicle to his fleet. He's also touched base about possibly replacing his Expedition. Adult probation, again, would like to replace their Expedition, and then juvenile probation would like to add another vehicle to their fleet. And then 2014 Jeep Compass, the one we felt would make the most sense was juvenile probation would like to replace a 2000 Grand Am. But we had requests from facilities for, again, that Honda Accord. Computer services kind of decided they're not going to move forward with it. But then, again, adult probation on the 2010 Ford Expedition.
So the Expeditions, there's 2 of them or 1? I mean, they're on 3 lines here.
They have 2 Expedition. They're both 2010s. I think one's like around 130-ish, one's 145,000 miles. So I think they're just hoping to get one of those replaced. I just didn't feel comfortable making a decision on them because I don't know the use of their vehicles and if they need to add a vehicle or not. That's
Well, that's,
just kind of looking at the replacement side of things.
I'd really like a little more information from each one of these groups, because I don't know how many miles juvenile probation's putting on a vehicle. But that's 2,000 Grand Am, but I know computer services, they use the carpool,
Quite a bit.
but
Yeah, and
that's
Adam,
regular, and if they could keep part of their tools inside a vehicle, that would be an ideal vehicle for them. But
Adam had sent me an email before this meeting saying to pull his name off that list.
did he?
Mhm.
Okay,
So,
okay, so take that one out. Thoughts on these others?
Do you know how much juvenile probation's using theirs? Is there more just in-town use, or is there?
theirs is a really hard one because on our spreadsheet, they have several vehicles and they're all really old, but they all have really low miles. So that's something as we dig into this fleet management thing, maybe we right-size their pool. I'm not really sure at this point, but
So, in your opinion, would you say adult probation has a greater need than juvenile probation at this time for this? For the Compass?
I have a hard time with that one because the Grand Am's a 2000, it's a 24-year-old vehicle.
But what's the mileage on it?
I could pull that up. It's under 100,000.
Versus the Expedition?
Mm,
What's the Expedition got on it?
145 to 135.
The Expedition used to be a sheriff's vehicle.
Yeah.
And then it bounced to commission, and then it bounced to, I think then it went to probation. It may have hit another department in there, in between there somewhere.
And that's something we could look at too with the Durango and the Corner, is if we did replace his Expedition, we could maybe swap that one out with juvenile probation. We don't seem, from my time here, I haven't seen anything in with many issues, so.
So how many miles are on the coroner's Expedition?
100, 125,
Oh, so
right around
it's
there.
less than the other expeditions. That's what I was wondering,
Yeah.
if we give the Durango to somebody else, or adult probation, if their Expedition would be better for the coroner. I mean, if you're putting bodies, Expedition's long, bigger than a Durango.
And with the first one, the 2013 Tahoe and emergency management, I don't know how much what it uses a vehicle. I have no idea.
Well, the issue
That's
with,
all I can say is the 08 Dodge needs to be replaced.
the issue with the Durango that I think made it appealing to the coroners, that had some lights and some other things on it for some safety issues that,
Yes, and he wanted something more reliable to travel to Boise back and forth is kind of what it was explained to me, which makes sense. It's going to be more reliable than his Expedition for sure, but
And then that leaves the truck here so that he doesn't have to come home from conference like he has had to do in the past to bring,
Right.
to get a body to take up for an autopsy.
But he doesn't have to take the truck when he goes to conferences.
No, he could take a pool vehicle.
There's a pool vehicle available,
That could be an option.
so. I'd honestly like a little more information from each of these. I mean, Shanda, do you have anything to add? Okay,
I can get you guys a spreadsheet that we've been working on that has every county vehicle on it, mileage, all
Well,
that,
like on these,
if you'd like to see that.
what are we gonna do with the ones that we displace? Like the emergency management would make a decision right now that would go to auction, right?
That's actually on the list for auction, that's number one.
Oh,
So regardless, it's,
it was going to auction, was taken away from him anyway.
well, that was kind of my question on it, is I don't know how often he uses a vehicle. If he's only used it a few times in a year, does he really need another one? I don't know.
I think that as an emergency manager, that he needs one. I mean, that's one, when he gets a call, he's gotta have the vehicle there and ready to go. I mean, that's just the way I feel. So,
You know, to your point, Ernie, this might be something that we need to talk with Anita about a little bit. And right, when we talked about in the elected officials meeting, right-sizing her fleet and some of her extra vehicles could mix in with this. And so there's probably a larger discussion.
And her department is where that Jeep Compass is coming from. I'm not sure if you were aware of that or not.
Yeah, she told us about it,
Yeah.
said it was sitting over
How
the
close,
village.
how close are you to have the whole fleet management discussion?
We're close. It's close.
Like 2 weeks, a month?
Like a couple weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought we was gonna have it right after we come back from Boise next week, so it'd be in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, we're
That's-
right there.
I'm okay if we wait on some of that, like with the Durango for the coroner. I'm okay if we move forward with that because we're gonna have a different decision on other vehicles. So if we need to take care of juvenile and adult, then we can do that here in a couple of weeks. But if you wanna wait, I'm okay that way as well.
Well. And the other ones, we got the same people interested in it. John, any thoughts?
I think, I don't see where we'd lose anything if we wait a couple of weeks and we have this, the whole thing in front of us. And because even with this pool, I mean, the vehicles over there at, Anita's place, I'm wondering if we shouldn't just have a large pool and people, and if, that might be a bad idea.
Well,
But we'll see.
I was walking across the parking lot the other day, and the adult probation, they were out there starting the vehicles. The batteries were dead in them because they don't drive them enough too. So I think that it is a little bigger conversation and justified needs and stuff instead of just I want.
Right.
Yeah, the low miles on their vehicles is kind of concerning because they're all pretty old. And most of them are under 100,000 miles.
So
So I tend to say, let's look at it in a couple of weeks. We got the whole thing in front of us and let's come up with whatever our strategy is gonna be.
And I personally feel like it's really easy to get a car out of the motor pool. Like, you walk down, you talk to Christy, you get a key, and it's not hard.
yeah. So are we in agreement then that 1, 2, what other one? 5 and 7 will go to auction? We're good with that.
Is that what your request was, 1, 2, 5, and 7? Okay.
And then number 3, are we willing to because that one is number 1 going to auction, are we willing to send that Tahoe to emergency management?
Sorry to me.
Okay with that? Okay. You good? I'll make that motion. You got that, Nancy? We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Ms. Fallert. Hal, you want to come on up too?
No.
Hello.
Go ahead and introduce yourself into the mic and then.
My name's
Tell-
Carolina Fowler. This-
Morning, Commissioners. I'm Mike Fowler.
Tell us what your desires are and what's going on.
Basically, my mom has heart issues that are getting worse by the day, so we are asking to put a park model RV on our lot right next to our garage so that she can stay in there, have some independence, but at the same time, we can look after her. I work from home, so I'm always there for her, so.
So when you say park model RV,
Mhm.
how big of a unit are we talking?
40 foot.
40 foot, okay. I didn't know if it was a trailer park RV.
Nope.
Sorry,
No.
Yeah.
What
It's a bumper pull.
Okay.
What's your address?
It's 11812 North Nelson Lane in Chubbuck or Pocatello. They tell us different things.
It's in Bannock County.
Bannock County, yes, exactly.
Hal, any comments?
Hal Johnson, Planning Director, Bannock County. Just wanted to make you aware, Commissioners, we do have in our ordinance in the zoning ordinance, temporary dwelling for dependent persons. The Fallards have attached a respective letter stating their need and the health conditions, etc. Quickly, the Board of Bannock County Commissioners may grant the applicant's request upon the condition that the approval must be reconsidered annually, and for annual renewal of the temporary dwelling, the Board of Bannock County Commissioners must find that the facts supporting the original approval still exist. So the Fallards just need to be aware. First, if it's granted by the commission, they would then need to work with our office for a building permit to set the model as they've requested, make sure that it meets the standards for attachment to the ground, etc. They will have other permits that they will need to secure through the state for connection of sewer, whatever. We'll work that through with them. And beyond that, we would just continue to monitor with them their need on an annual basis and come back to you every year and state what's going on. It's an allowed use in our ordinance granted by the commission.
Okay.
And what the reason was for?
I believe that in your
health
packet-
reasons, some kind of health reasons.
Yeah, relative to, and there are different situations that arise, Commissioner, relative to health. One of the items that I've experienced in conversations with other situations similar, some people want to try to maintain as much independence for the parent or the custodial person, and I don't see that this is a problem relative to how it applies to the ordinance.
Well, it's renewed every year, so that would be my main concern. If somebody thought they could just keep it there forever or bring something else in on an annual renewal, I'm content.
So are you taking out your fence on the side of the house?
There's a asphalt parking next to the, on the south side of the garage.
So it'll fit right in there?
Yeah, fits right in. There is a little bit of a plastic or a vinyl fence there, that we moved.
Okay.
No, we did get a permit and got a septic in, and it's all approved.
Yeah, saw that, so. No, I think this is a good thing.
Any concerns?
Nope.
Motion?
Mr. Chair, I would move that we grant the request to put the park model RV on the property with a 1-year check-in renewal. How's that?
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Thank you so
Good luck.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, good
Appreciate
luck.
it.
Yes.
All right. Let's go ahead and talk about planning and development. Review suggested edits to Bannock County zoning ordinance.
Commissioner Hal Jensen, Planning Director, Bannock County. I have with me Tristan Borkwin, Assistant Director. In your packet are a number of edits to the ordinance, as well as a new ordinance proposal for a solar power facility. And if you have questions at this time, I would be glad to answer those for you. If you have questions, concerns about those edits, reasoning why, I am available, we are available to answer those questions.
Couple quick questions. On the top half, where we're talking about residential suburban districts and minimum setbacks, we got rid of a lot of A and B annotations, C-sections. Would you talk to that real quick? Why did we get rid of the annotations?
So one of the items that we have in our ordinances talks about side yard setbacks. And then it has an annotation that takes you to a footnote that says 20 foot or height of the structure, whichever is greater. Which, with as much development as we've had over the past number of years, that is a particular task that consumes a huge amount of time, as well as many applicants come to us and have a larger structure, we tell them, oh, well, the height of the structure based upon these calculations to the roof height is this, so you need to move it to that. And it's just a lot of work. It's like, what's the difference if the minimum is 20 feet and all of a sudden the height of the structure is telling you that it now has to be 22? What are we gaining other than our office spends a lot of time? So we are looking to get rid of height of the structure, whichever is greater. It's just an absolute fixed dimension. If they come to us and they say we want to diminish, we have the option to do a variance for diminishing that, but we also have a 10% minor variance that is conducted internally in the office. So if somebody said, I'm 20 feet, but I want to get 10% and go to 18, we can deal with that internally in the office without having to take it to council. It reduces our workload and simplifies the process for applicants. Across the board, for every zone, we've chosen to do that.
So, just, I know a lot of you are here, we're not just talking about solar. So there's a lot of things in this. The next step on all this process.
So it depends on how you want to proceed. We can do another work session if you have edits to this document that you want to say, please make these edits, and then we'll schedule a public hearing. It can go to public hearing at that point. We can have a couple of work sessions where we're working through edits and changes and then go to a public hearing, but ultimately it would go to a public hearing where we can have public testimony and make a final decision.
Okay. And that's what I want everybody to realize. We're not making a decision here on changing anything or adopting anything. We're evaluating, looking at things, and then there will be, like I say, either another work session or two, and then also the public will have opportunity to see a product and then make comments on it in a public hearing, and after that, even after the public hearing, things can be adjusted, and then before anything becomes a statute or an ordinance.
Correct.
Okay, so.
Is that a 60-day process? If we move this forward today, does that give you 60 days to do the public hearing and all that other stuff before it?
Yes, so the moratorium will lift. April 10th would be the first day that applications would be able to be received.
So let's say the moratorium lifts and we don't have anything in place. What happens?
They can apply for a conditional use permit still through the ordinance we have in place now, and we have no regulations in our ordinance, so at that point it would be up to the council to place any conditions that they felt were necessary.
So I'll just tell you that if we haven't come to something where I feel more content, we'll have a meeting and we'll extend the moratorium. That's the way I feel. Because
at that point, Commissioner, you need to have conversation with legal, because I don't believe that by state statute you can extend the moratorium. It's 180 days, period.
Period, okay.
Yeah, so Idaho code, it's 182 days, so we could extend by 2 days because we went to 180 just because that seemed like a more reasonable number. But once it lifts, a similar or like moratorium cannot be put in place any sooner than 1 year from the lifting of the moratorium.
I guess we wouldn't hold any meetings for a year on solar. Then we put a moratorium in.
Could I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
And quickly, Commissioner, before you go on that question, the reason that the time frame, or that it seems that our office, we have not been hasty in this. We realize that 180 days to put this together is a very short time frame, and to have clarity and conciseness in a proposed potential ordinance and all of the things that go into that, from gathering information, trying to understand what makes a good ordinance based upon not only the protection of personal property rights of county constituency as well as the county in general, understanding industry standards for how all of this goes together. It's been a pretty arduous task and very compressed to get it to this point. I don't want anyone to feel as though we're doing it hastily just because we have 180 days. I mean, it's a given fixed quantity, and we're trying to perform to that schedule. So,
Okay. And that wasn't an understanding I had. We was in Power County on Monday, and they talked about how long the moratorium was a little bit. It sounded to me like, maybe they had extended or it was longer.
So,
John?
Commissioner Crowder, are your questions relative to the solar component? Because there's some other items before we go there in other aspects of ordinance edits that I would like to just finish review.
Why don't you finish that, and then I'll ask my question.
Just for conciseness
Yes,
of following
that
process.
sounds fine.
On page 11, you should be aware, Commission, and for general comment for public awareness, the reason that we have a work session similar to that between this office and the Commission is because you are the legislative body that then would adopt this. We are here to have conversations so that we can help you understand, one, the language and the reasoning why. And it's required by statute that we basically do this so that there's clarity to the legislative body before they make a motion and take an action, okay? On page 11, we are adding an agricultural building exemption section that gives us greater clarity with some of the items that come to our office for applications on agricultural buildings, okay? Right now, we have a fairly open-ended element and open to interpretation on what constitutes an agricultural building, which then exempts them out of the code. So we've added that for clarity. We have a very large query, shall I use that word, from patrons specifically in the ag section because of the difficulty of housing right now. So we have added section 403, farm labor dwellings, which allows operations to add additional residential structures on a farm operation specifically for housing their workers, okay? And that increase has been in demand for probably the last 2.5 to 3 years, and our ordinance doesn't allow it, and we've not chosen to go down that path until recently because it became even more prominent with questions and how could I do this and what about that, without going in and subdividing land, breaking out an acre here or there. We added this to make it more convenient for those operations to get residential housing. Yes.
Question on that, and I'm all for this for the farmers, but Section C, the dwelling shall not be used as a rental unit for non-farm labor. How do you intend to monitor that?
We have countless items of those types of statements in our ordinance that I don't have a policing action. I have no idea, to be honest, Commissioner, how to answer that question.
And I don't know how you would. So,
for instance, we have a section for cottage dwellings which allows somebody to build a residence on another parcel within 100 feet of the primary residence, and it says that it will be deed restricted and not used for gain. So let's assume that a cottage structure is being used for a family member, more specifically like the Fowlerts, but now we have a permanent structure rather than a temporary structure, and the aged family member dies, and now that property sits vacant. I have no idea when that person dies.
right.
I have no idea whether they choose to use it as a rental at that point. It's fairly nebulous. I don't know how you police and monitor that.
Well, I guess that's kind of my question. If we don't really intend to police or monitor it because of the difficulties, why even have it in there? I understand why you want it in there, but
I would say some of that is more for a deterrent for people who you're going to have the 5% of people who are just not going to obey the rules, but it's the 95% who will. And so you can't write an ordinance necessarily for the 5%. So I feel like it's more just a deterrent to say, you're not supposed to do this, so please don't, kind of a thing.
Gives the neighbor the opportunity to complain, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I like that. I'm glad that we have that in there because that is a concern.
Okay. So relative to all of those other items, those are edits that are other aspects of either the current ordinance or items that are amending other sections of the current ordinance, which then brings us to Commissioner Crowder, the entire section of solar, which is large and small scale solar energy power facilities.
Just to make sure I'm clear, the parcel must be a minimum of 10 acres in size. Is that the parcel with the owner's house and the ranch house?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions at this point other than that to these other edits and sections?
Nope.
Okay.
And did you want to discuss this at all before I start asking my questions?
I think just by way of introduction, it would be good to share with you some of the reasoning why and what led us to this point. I would say that in 2020, I had probably 5 different telephone calls between 2020 and the start of 21 that came from companies across the United States, inquiries. 2 from Texas, 2 from Texas, 2 from the Denver area, and 1 from the Chicago area that were representatives of quote-unquote power companies, asking about Bannock County in general. Didn't think much of it because of those telephone calls, nothing really ever developed. Then one of those groups out of Denver called and called back more recently and scheduled a meeting with us, and we sat down and they told us what they were looking to accomplish, the reasons why, what processes would be in place. And really the bottom line reasoning is that twofold. One, land in Bannock County that could facilitate a solar facility as well as have ease of connection to the grid was wide open in Bannock County. I mean, that's what's really sparked the interest.
When did that call take place?
I would say that was probably the start of 23.
Mm-hmm.
They called back. We had another gentleman that called us, came in and sat down with us, and then we started to realize that they were serious. Then the other issues came about later in this fall. We realized that the only mechanism that we had in place was a conditional use permit as it's outlined currently in our ordinance. Didn't know anything about a large-scale solar facility at all. And the more we researched it and started to realize the deficiencies of what we had in place, there were some conversations held specifically with Commissioner Huff. He reached out to, I believe, other counties just to find out what was going on, perhaps statewide. We gathered some information. That's when we came back to you and said, ooh, time out. We're really, really close to having an application, and we don't have any protections because we have no ordinance that talks about things like assuming that a facility was put in place. What does that look like when I'm no longer here, or when this commission is no longer here, and the constituency of Bannock County is facing what I learned in the process called decommissioning? What happens with all of this? I mean, literally what happens, and we realize we weren't protected. That's why the recommendation came from our end to give us time to put this document together, that we should place the moratorium, which was, shall we say, it was a good solution, but getting it in place was awkward at best. But it's there. It gave us the opportunity to start.
The solution's the moratorium, as you're talking about.
So it led us to the moratorium. We're in the middle of that now, and we're trying to hopefully put something in place. We have felt internally in our discussions in the office that this helps us protect the interests of the county, because we don't have anything legally in place that just says, no, you can't build those types of facilities in Bannock County. No, we're not interested. When they come to my office and they say, this is what we would like to do, how do we accomplish this? You apply for a conditional use permit. Well, when we look at like I said, those deficiencies, it made me extremely nervous about why we would or we wouldn't do that. So here we are with this document to this point.
Gotcha. Anything else to add, or?
No, I don't think so. Hopefully that gives those patrons that are here and concerned about this, help them to understand that we're not greenlighting anything, because there's a lot of confusion on whether or not there is or isn't. There are no applications at this point. We were close to receiving them, but the moratorium pushed all of that down for a while until we can get through this.
Okay.
I was nervous, Commissioner, because we had no mechanism to just look at those people.
Well, justifiably so,
and
I think.
And to look at those people and say, no, we're not interested. Well, why aren't you interested? That's, I don't know. I don't know why we're not interested. So,
all right.
From a legal standpoint, this, I believe, going down this path leads us to a path of protection when an application does come.
Okay. So the first questions I have really are about the process. I don't think, while I've been a commissioner, we have had in front of us the opportunity to try to write a new ordinance or something that we are unfamiliar with or know nothing about. So the first thing I want to find out a little bit more is, we sent this, we had the moratorium put in place. We asked you guys to come up with some kind of ordinance that would allow us to reasonably look at such proposals and figure out whether we want them or not. What is the process that you are going through to come up with your recommendation of an ordinance? How does that work?
I will turn the time over to Tristan. I'm just going to share with you that our starting point was to gather as many ordinances, either locally, inside the state and outside the state, of other counties that had been down this process. And we started looking for the good and the bad, what we felt were good ordinances, others that we felt had pieces and parts of information that we should study and perhaps incorporate. And then we started assembling from a base what made sense. Just so that you know, Tristan, what are we on? Draft number 5 or number 6? Draft number 5. So, and that's all taken place, just for your information, internally in the office. And then once we knew we had it, I'm jumping ahead of myself, we also had selected some patrons as well as people in other industries. Fish and Game was involved. We had representatives that we sent these drafts out to and asked for their review and their input. Sometimes we would receive input back from them, other times we didn't hear anything. And we continued to go through the refinement process through our respective edits to find out what made sense logically with clarity and conciseness following a document. Here's where you start. You logically follow yourself all the way through so that it made sense on what the requirements were for submittals in the application process, decommissioning, all of the things that go into it that we felt protected the county through the CEP process. So it was at that point on, I think, draft number 4, draft number 5, that it went to the council. And This process requires, at a minimum, 2 public hearings. And because the council represents the commission for the first hearing, that's where it went, you will notice that in the upper left-hand corner, it talks about council edits, and they're highlighted in yellow, and those were the items that came from discussion in that hearing. And then, based upon those edits, a recommendation was then to take it to the commission. And we find ourselves here at this meeting right now to discuss any future or additional edits, comments, concerns from anything that you've read and that you've reviewed, and any comments that you have relative to the language.
So it's a new type of project for Bannock County, something we've never done, and we have nothing written about it. So if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, so you guys, you collected other ordinance. Where has this been done before?
Correct.
You collected some other ordinances, you read those ordinances, you tried to identify what was good and bad in them as you start to craft what an ordinance here might look like.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then it sounds like you said you reached out to, I forget the term you used, but you reached out to some other people, and that included Fish and Game, and asked them to comment, and so government agencies you reached out to. Who else did you reach out to get their opinion on what an ordinance might look like?
So we have an advisory committee created for the full rewrite of the ordinance.
Is that advisory committee specific to this particular ordinance, or is it
It's-
a general standing committee?
No, so it's particular to the ordinance that we're working on to rewrite the ordinance in its entirety. So since we're making edits to the current ordinance, it was just the same advisory committee used, since they're already
So it's a
part
standing
of,
committee.
it's just for ordinance rewrite.
Who's on that committee?
So we have a few developers, we have an engineer, we have an environmentalist from Fish and Game, we have some developers, surveyors, and then we also have the director, planning and development director for Pocatello and Chubbuck, and also the director for Bingham County.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any members of the general public who would not be engineers or surveyors?
Yes, we do. We actually have one gentleman who is a farmer rancher. Trying to think who else. I think that might be it. I can't remember if I'm missing anybody. There's 15 people on the committee.
Wow, that's a big committee. Okay, so did the people who were looking at this rewrite, making their committee, well, you guys, did you guys reach out at all to some of these entities that are looking to bring a solar project? Did you have discussions with them?
So there were a couple that came to the work session with the commissioners about a month ago, I think it was. So when they were here, we did make a lot of notes based on what they felt were industry standard stuff that we didn't necessarily have defined correctly. And so we did use some of that information to help gather some of the more technical information that we just don't have any knowledge of.
As a point of clarity, there was the group that was ready to make the application was informed that the moratorium was in place. At that point, they reached out and hired a local attorney and asked if they could do a review of our respective edits, and we said yes. And so a gentleman by the name of Dustin Manwaring, who represents that group, sent us respective edits and language that they thought was either correct or incorrect relative to what did or didn't work.
Besides this one individual, this farmer rancher who represents the community members, is there any way for the community in general? We have a lot of people here today that are interested in this. Is there any way for these individuals to get their input into this process, or I should say really this, did they have an opportunity to get their input at all into this process?
Yes, at the public hearing with council, and they would again at a public hearing with the commissioners.
Is that, and so the only opportunity the public has is when you hold a public hearing? So there's no ability for this, is there an ability for a proposed ordinance, or you're talking about language for the community in general to be able to know about this, send in their comments while this is being written, instead of when you're having a public hearing and you're voting yes or no to move it forward?
Typically, there's not outlined a process for that. It would be the public hearing process that would be where public testimony would be accepted. Anybody can write an ordinance and present an ordinance to the county commissioners, so they have the opportunity if they would like to write their own and submit it, and it would go through the same process that ours would go through.
Okay.
So do you know if this has been put on our website?
Yes. Yeah, it was on the website. It's been on the website since January 10th, when we submitted everything for the public hearing with council.
And have we coordinated with Emma, our PR, to
Yep.
put that out?
Yeah, so when we did all the notification for a public hearing, it went into the Idaho State Journal, and then Emma sent out public service announcements to radio and television for the public
And
hearing.
with that public hearing, they have the opportunity to come and present at that hearing, or to send letters in or
Correct.
comments in ahead of time. And so those are part of the process of allowing the general public to hear, to see, and to participate.
Correct.
And that
But
is,
it sounds like at that stage, though, it's already written. The proposal's in front of the Planning and Zoning Committee, so they really didn't have any input. Maybe they had this 15-day opportunity to submit what their concerns were, but the community itself didn't really have any part in what an ordinance that's going to affect them might look like.
correct.
Yeah. To me, that's a problem, because to me, the experts in Downey are the residents of Downey. We have experts in energy, we have experts in this type of an industry and that type of thing. But I do have concern that we are not getting the community members' input at an early stage in what their concerns might be, until we're now in a public hearing and this thing could just move right through. Okay, but I want to move on to something else. That's just a statement. So this all started really because, and I commend you for being on top of this and recommending to us, and I commend Commissioner Huff in particular for bringing up that we need to get something on the books to protect us and to protect really to protect our community for something that could come through and we have no ability to approve or disapprove, whether it's great or whether it's terrible. So I think that's great that you guys have been proactive in all this stuff. But the way that technology is advancing, this is not going to be, I suspect, the last time that we're going to have something come up that we don't know anything about, that we didn't have the foresight, because we can't know everything. We can't know what the future is going to be. There's stuff in technology today, I'm sure there's many things that I have no idea what it's all about, that could be brought to us, and somebody wants to put some kind of special plant in or something that we know absolutely nothing about, that for all I know could destroy the environment, but because we don't know, there's not much we can do about it. I feel like rather than waiting to see what comes in front of us, we really ought to consider developing an ordinance that states that if something in our current ordinance is not expressly approved, it is prohibited. And by putting something like that in place, I think it keeps us from having to scramble and do a 180-day emergency study. And one thing I'll back up to talk about here, you talked about how compressed this is and how complicated this is. And I've been doing some study on it as well, and I think it is very complicated. There is a lot to understand. There's a lot of unknowns. I've looked at case studies in other counties across the nation where having certain types of developments come in and basically ruin the community. Not to say that this would, I don't know. But I think we definitely ought to give ourselves some breathing room, and I think perhaps putting together an ordinance that just prohibits unknown projects that aren't addressed gives us the breathing room we need to really do a thorough study. And I don't know that 6 months, as Commissioner Moser said, is enough for this.
And just to clarify, this isn't the first ordinance we've ever written.
No, for me.
Yeah.
For the junior commission.
Okay,
Yeah.
because, I mean, that's why we have so many on the books. I mean, so it's not the first round. And I guess the process of involving the public, I mean, it's set and there is a process. And when we get to the public hearing, there's still opportunities to change, to adopt and adapt differently. And that's for the first public hearing, and then even after it comes to us in the second public hearing, there's those opportunities to send it back and say, we need to review, change, do something different. So I don't know how else, or a way that you start from scratch and try to get the public involved from the very beginning until you have something there to start with that they have the ability to think about and talk about. So I'm all for the public having input, but I don't know how in changing the process where you would do that. Because if the first statement is, well, we're just going to make an ordinance on solar, you got to have a group that's going to put it together to start with somewhere.
Yeah, and I think that group ought to, I understand where you're coming from, but I think that group ought to include a good set of voices from the community in which this thing's going to go. And even right from the get-go, where you don't really have it fleshed out. I know it's a difficult thing to get information to the public, and I do know, we talk to us about this in elections all the time, nobody votes. You know, you get 18% of the people voting to spend 100% of the people's money. And so some of that is going to be on complacency and apathy, but some of that is really on us getting the word out to people that we're looking at something. And at least I think we need to do a better job of informing the community what's going on.
And I don't have any disagreement there, but I'm just saying that I appreciate this group, our group, that have gone through lots of ordinances. I mean, they put in a lot of hours. They didn't put anything out there haphazardly. They're working hard too. So I commend them also.
As I did.
Commissioner Crowder, an item to consider, actually 2 items to consider. We don't have anything in our ordinance other than following state statute for moratoriums, okay, which is a mechanism that the state has in place under state statute. If it was needed more time, then I think we need to go to the legislature and say that when moratoriums are placed because of changes of technology, because of how much information needs to be gathered and how much time consumption this process, I'm not telling you how to do your job. I'm making a suggestion that perhaps conversations with the legislature to change that particular statute need to take place from the commission's end.
That'll be on my notes as we go to Boise next week.
And I don't mean that rudely. That's my first
I don't take it
thought
rudely.
that
In
comes
fact,
to
I
my
think
mind.
that's a absolutely good, that was actually in my notes, that maybe we need to deal with the legislature on this. So I appreciate that comment.
And then the second item, just be aware
Yeah.
that state statute requires a minimum of 2 public hearings. That doesn't mean that when we come to you the next time, and all of these good patrons that are in attendance with their concerns come to that meeting, and then at that point, they get to express, okay? We gather that information, we do another edit. Perhaps we do another work session to talk about what has or hasn't been incorporated and the reasons why we've added it or we chose not to. And then we do a 3rd public hearing. You have control of the process ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that the control of the process is once again compressed into that 180 days.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it difficult. So,
Yeah.
also be aware that I don't know how many we found that we looked and we, went through. I would say we probably looked at 10, 11, 12 different ordinances. We compressed that down to 7, of which we were able to make copies of, and then we started taking parts and pieces. And to be honest, we used the draft ordinance from Twin Falls as our base. And I'll tell you what, we bled and stripped all kinds of edits out of that thing and added to and took away. And we came up with, I think we came up with, not a bulletproof, but we came up with a very, I use the words all the time, clear and concise document. We've gone from good to better. We are now moving towards best, and we will not get to best until we have our next public hearing and we start gathering those comments and information. I need to make a note to all of the commission right now. There's a fair amount of misinformation because a lot of people have assumed that because we're going down this path that an application is in place. I will share with you there are no applications in place, but they are coming.
Yeah.
The reason that I share that with you, there's concern on our end about the process. We're receiving email about people's concerns, why they don't want it. We, actually I shouldn't say we, Tristan has responded. We will be return emailing those that we're receiving to let people know your concerns are noted. However, at this time, there is no application, so please save this email that you've sent to us for further, so that when we do have an application and we do need to move forward with the conditional use permit process, and those people that have sent things to us are aware, they can send it to us again. Because it's too laborious for our office at this point to start tracking all of that. So we're trying to be proactive and respond to those people that have concerns and are sending it to us, but letting them know the opportunity is coming.
And that leads me to a third point, actually. All this work is being done to develop an ordinance that deals with land that's zoned to agriculture, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And would there be an ability for a power company like this, let's say there's a big swath of land that's zoned residential rural, that's what it's zoned, and maybe there's nothing on it. Could these guys come and put in an application for a residential rural gigantic solar farm and be able to get that approved?
No, not the way the draft is currently written.
Why?
Because we have in our use chart, so page 11 at the top outlines small scale and large scale solar power facilities, and it's stated as not permitted in residential rural, residential suburban, and recreational zoning districts.
Why is it not permitted?
Because we felt that those were your residential uses, and those more heavily residential areas, it didn't make sense to have a large-scale solar facility packed into something that's supposed to look residential.
Okay, but agricultural, to me, I think of a farm. And so the third thing I wanted to bring up is agricultural land even appropriate? Is this, they call it a solar farm, but it's not a farm. This is an industrial process. I think you could make a case that this type of project has no business on residential or agricultural land, and it really ought to be in industrial land.
So that
I think that's something to consider.
Yeah, and that is an amendment, that's an edit that we could make. We could put in the use chart that agricultural land is also an N, not permitted, and that it's only conditionally permitted in commercial, general, light industrial, and industrial zones. There is a section at the end talking about agrivoltaics, which is having agriculture along with a solar farm, you could consider only agrivoltaic solar farms being permitted in ag, so that the ground underneath is still being used for agricultural purposes. So those are some of the comments and considerations that I think would be beneficial to look at and determine if this is an ordinance that the commission does like, but only likes it for certain zones. That's definitely something that we could look at and edit.
And so just to summarize and end my comments here, I would say that I'm not ready to say, yeah, I want to move this to a public hearing. I want more work done. I want the public involved more in what's going on, and whether you do town halls or whatever you do to get their input, that's what I'd like to see. Then thirdly, what I think we really need to do before we get more of these projects coming in, we can solve this thing, I think, we can check with our legal counsel, which I talked to this morning about this, putting in an ordinance that simply states that anything that isn't expressly permitted is not approved. And that gives us, we don't have to rely on then 180 days. We have all the time we need. We may have a lot of easy projects that come in front of us that we can solve in 10 minutes. This is not one of them. This one's complicated, and we're going to get more.
So along them lines, I'd say that we do a second public hearing. Make the edits and stuff. A second public hearing with the land use board, so that those edits are reviewed and stuff by the public and the opportunities before it comes back to the commission for a public hearing.
Well, we've got how many town halls currently scheduled, meeting with various communities?
6 more.
6 more?
And they'll be completed within a month, right?
Yeah,
the next
end
month.
of February.
We could look at potentially setting up separate town halls with elected officials too. You guys give the public's comment that way.
Well, I don't want to mix the two, because we're going to set up some public town hall meetings with elected officials, but I don't, because I've talked to Christie about that. I don't want to, you got public hearings going right now. You got comments coming in. And so I don't want to have 2 meetings for the same purpose.
So that said, I need to step back. One is on a personal level, as well as from the director's standpoint. We've been trying to rewrite the ordinance for 3+ years now. And by statute, state statute, you have to have a comprehensive plan, which we have, which we've had discussions that we're not particularly pleased with because of the process and the number of people that were involved in changes in leadership. There's just a lot of, there are many things that leave the existing comprehensive plan, in my opinion, short from public input. And we've scheduled those public meetings specifically for that, okay? I appreciate what took place on Tuesday night of this week in Downey. Good and bad. That said, we need to step back, meaning internally in the office, and look at what best satisfies our needs. Because if I still don't gain information relative to the comprehensive plan, I've gained absolutely nothing and spent all of my time on this.
Yeah.
And that is not what I need at this point.
Well, and I believe that your
And
town
so
hall
we
meetings
may-
will change a little bit as
We
you go
may
into other
need,
cities.
we may need to schedule some town meetings on Wednesday evenings or something other than where we're scheduled for our Tuesday, Thursdays. And seek information and meet with those people in those other communities.
Well,
For instance,
if we need to do that, we'll do that. I mean, you got this week that you experiment, and then next week, who's next week? What city?
Next week is McCammon and Lava.
Okay. And let's see what the, what the conversations are a little bit there, and if we need to go and have another town hall meeting specifically to talk about these things, then we can do that also.
And I don't disagree, I'm just trying to think with our workload, other aspects that we have currently in place, what we're trying to accomplish with other aspects of comprehensive plan, ordinance, solar ordinance, etc. I need some clarity on our end on how we gather that information. Okay?
No problem. Anything else,
And
Jeff?
real quickly, before we leave, those people that are here, I just need to, many of them were with us on Tuesday night, and say thank you for your participation. We did garner some really good information and some clarity on other things that we had not necessarily researched. So there's more information that we're trying to disseminate and apply against this to see what does or doesn't make sense. So,
Jeff?
No, I just want to commend you guys on the work you've done. As I've gone through and researched and pulled up statutes from other states like you did, I think we're in line with what's going on around us. I received this package today, so whoever dropped that off, thank you for that. Didn't have time to get all the way through it, but in looking at the ordinance that they put forth in that, we're not too far off of what we're seeing. There's a couple edits here or there, but so I commend you guys on what you're doing and where we're at. And again, you know, I appreciate the concern about going quickly, and that's a valid concern, but we were caught unawares the other way. So I think we've traveled the best path that we could with the moratorium and doing this. So I appreciate where we're at, but I also appreciate the opportunity for more community input, which, as everybody knows, I push for that transparency all the time. We have a PIO, we stream because of the things that I've pushed for. So thank you for participating. That is a big deal to me, to make sure that the community is here and that we get that opportunity to hear your voices. So thank you for that, and thank you for your efforts.
and last item, I did first edit, so I got it to good.
There you go.
But the accolades need to go to the woman that's sitting by my left.
Thank you.
So we have a motion, or not a motion, a direction we're headed
Yes.
right now that everybody's comfortable with.
Questions for Larry?
So back to council, correct? For a second public hearing.
That's,
Okay.
well, and then we'll decide if we need to have separate public hearing or open
Open
town hall
houses.
meetings to just discuss this in itself.
Let me shift gears here before we finish that.
Okay.
And Tristan will help give me clarity. The next available public hearing with council without scheduling a special meeting would
Is
be March,
21st.
which way compresses our schedule.
I'm
It's
just,
We
easier.
couldn't get a public hearing with commissioners probably before the moratorium lifts doing that.
I'm not, so my direction is not, let's go to another public hearing.
Okay.
My direction would be, let's start holding town halls with the community, get more input, and then revisit this, whatever we're gonna come up with as an ordinance, whether it's gonna be in industrial land only, or whether it's gonna be in agricultural land. If it is in agriculture, what are gonna be the things that are gonna protect the community? I mean, I'm reading ordinances that talk about berms being built up and all kinds of things. I think a lot more work needs to be done with this, and I want the community input. So that, my direction is not, let's go to another public hearing.
Okay.
So
We can put together town
I have
halls.
clarity on that
we can
statement.
put town halls together, but, but in the process, then we're gonna adjust and make changes without consulting with the planning and zoning board, without them being involved in another public hearing or something. So we're leaving them out of the loop now.
Well, what I'm saying is, I don't want to get to the stage where we're doing a public hearing where that's the one-shot deal and then it's coming to us to yes or no. I want more community input right now. So down the line, yeah, we're going to need to have another public hearing,
Okay.
but I don't think we're at that stage. So that would not be my direction, is now let's go set up another public hearing. No, it's do some town halls, talk to the community, get some more information, revisit this ordinance draft, then get your public hearing.
So who do you want to have the public hearings?
You will be the next
Just
public hearing,
us?
regardless.
As
The next-
commissioners, or?
No,
That
I
offers
agree
also.
that down the road, there should be, planning and zoning should have another public hearing, just not now.
Okay.
I don't want it in March. That's what I'm saying.
This is my recommendation based upon time frame and what I think I hear from Commissioner Crowder, what would make sense. I don't know that I'm going to receive, or we are going to receive, a lot of input on the north end of the valley. Because the interest is not to go to the north end of the valley, it's basically the south end. Those people that have potential applications have already had their conversations with the patrons of South Bannock County. They know what's coming, they know really they're the ones with the bullseye on their back because of that substation. I think that we should internally in my office figure out when we can do a couple of town meetings, gather information, make some edits, get another work session in front of the commission so that you know this is the information that we gathered, this is the ordinance that we now have as a proposal for you to review, basically repeat this meeting, and then if you're copacetic and have calm moving it forward, we schedule a public hearing so that the patrons of Bannock County can be heard in a public meeting as required by law one more time, even though we have had conversation with them in our town meetings, so that the patrons and the commission as the legislative body are all on the same page, and then we move it forward with that last public hearing.
I feel like this whole thing is being rushed because of this 180 days coming to an end. To me, that's a big problem. And so I would ask my other commissioners, what do you think about what I said? Let's get an ordinance in place that prohibits anything not expressly permitted, and that gives us all the time we need to study this.
And that's where we all need to have a conversation. You've had a conversation with legal. We all haven't. So we all need to have that conversation with legal.
So I'd say,
And we can move forward on that. The second part about this is, rather than having multiple town hall meetings, let's get a hold of the school district and let's see if we can get the auditorium, Braden, see if we can get the auditorium, have a set date so that we have room enough to accommodate a mass group of people and everybody can hear the same thing at one time instead of multiple meetings.
No, that sounds good.
I would rather do something like that.
that sounds great.
Will commission be in attendance to that meeting?
We will.
Okay. Will that meeting be under your responsibility because you are a quorum?
We will have to meet as a quorum and it will be recorded and directed.
Okay.
Just like any quorum that we have, where we have a quorum.
Okay.
But we'll have conversations and your office would need to be there and we coordinate and work together.
Commissioner Crowder,
Yes, sir.
for my clarity, are you looking to take action before the end of the moratorium to place action of an ordinance specifically prohibiting until,
Yes.
which then takes the compression of the 180-day time frame away?
That's what I'm looking to do.
Okay, I will leave that for you to deal with.
We'll
for you
talk
to
with legal
deal with
and
internally.
we'll have a meeting
Moving
and
forward.
Yep.
so that Brian's able to prepare and answer our questions. Being blindsided on right now as he walked in.
So that said, depending, I mean, there are either ors in this equation relative to that potential of trying to prohibit. If that is not a viable option, I'm still moving forward, Commissioner, as though the 180 days is in place and we still have that time.
I think that's a wise decision.
Just so that we
Nope, understand.
Okay.
We're on the same page.
want to make sure that you're good with that.
Further discussion? With that being said, we'll be at recess until 2